Right, we've already drawn up the picture with the scale finder. I'm using a Saunders Waterford block, my Marilyn Allis one, and it's £140. Now I'm just going to tidy up this picture a little bit, as I've taken out the lines, and what I want to do now is to make it sort of flow so it doesn't look like you've been drawing from painting by numbers. So we just sort of get a little bit of movement and feeling into that. There's a little bit of shadow there, can go in, a few lines from the clothes. Just pull that face round a little bit. Yeah, that's better. It's just giving it a little bit of movement and joined up everything. I'm going to keep the background white because I think that will give us a lot more impact. Let's start with the girl's hair. Now it's blonde, and where the sun is hitting it, it is very, very pale. So I'm using a raw sienna, slightly darker than it is in reality on the photograph, but that's because of keeping the background white. Now into that, I'm just going to dip my brush into some burnt umber, because although it's blonde, when that hair is in shadow, it actually looks quite a lot darker than you think. And into that, I'm dipping my brush into sepia. It's a bit down the middle. It's a lot darker than you think. Let me just leave that like that for the moment, and we'll carry on with the t-shirt and the trousers. This t-shirt, I'm going to use a cobalt blue. The light is really hitting it on the left hand side, so we'll keep that a little bit lighter. So very watered down cobalt blue, just pull that down, and then dipping into the thicker mix of it. Just nice big brush marks so nothing nasty happens on the paper. And whilst that's still wet, I want that t-shirt to actually run into her trousers, and I'm going to mix some sepia and some Prussian blue together, which gives me a lovely dark, sort of almost black but not black. Just going to touch that. Let's just spread a little bit, and that's all good stuff. You can see it's spreading up, but that just sort of looks like it's moving. I'm going to leave a little white gap between the legs, because if I don't do that, I can't get anything darker than what I'm putting on, and so it should look a bit like a mermaid with 2 feet. So just that little bit of mark down there. And wash that off well, because that's quite staining. We don't want to end up with Smurfy people. So the next colour I'm going to mix is a skin tone. I'm going to use a light red, a tiny bit of sepia into that, a little bit more. And quite watered down. Just get the consistency right, and then a lot lighter than that. You can use a piece of paper to test that on. Now she has got white skin, but because it's in shadow, it's quite a lot darker than you think. I'm just going to wash that brush better. It looks a bit blue. I really didn't want to have Smurfy people. Prussian blue is very, very staining. Let's just go back into the light red, water down, just bring that down. That's about the right tone. It will dry quite a lot lighter because watercolour always does. Onto that side. And now just the ankles. Now that's quite light, that side, so just take off some of that colour, just keep it very, very pale. That's quite dark. Just touch that. I know it's going to run, I just want it to run a little bit and not too much. Now just using that same Prussian blue, I'm just going to paint the sole of her shoe. And that underneath bit, now she's got white straps, but we'll just make that dark. That's good, that's run, that just adds to the movement. Now whilst that's drying, we'll go onto the little boy, and then I can put any other marks in afterwards all in one go. So a little bit of blonde where the sun's hitting his head. His hair's a little bit darker, so straight into that sepia. And just let that dry before I put on the skin tone. It's got a green t-shirt. I don't tend to use ready-made greens, but what I'm going to use is a little bit of lemon yellow and a little bit of the Prussian blue. That makes a really gorgeous green. So water down to start with. The light's really hitting him on the shoulders, across his back there and down that side. Now the thicker mix, we can actually go quite a lot darker than that, so a little bit more paint. The thicker the paint, the darker it will be. That's better. To sort of swing round because they're moving quite fast. We want to capture that movement. His trousers aren't quite so dark. I'm just going to add a little bit more blue into that mix. A little bit more water. Just catch that so it runs. There are some patterns on those trousers. I've decided not to put those in because I don't think that will help at all. Put that down again, leave a little white mark just to separate those legs. Clean the brush really, really well. And back into that light red, just pop in his ears. It's darker this side. So all I'm going to do for the other side is take off some of that paint. Just pull that out a little bit so the light's hitting it there. There's a little bit of light on his hand, but not a lot, and the rest is quite a lot darker, so let's just pop that straight in. That's around, that's good. And that arm is in quite a lot of shadow too. And both legs are in quite a lot of shadow, so we just pop that same tone in all the way down. Let's just pop in the soles of his feet. Using that Prussian blue sepia. Now I've darkened it because it wouldn't show up if it's white. I'm going to carry on with the bucket and then we'll put all the dark bits in one go. So the bucket's not going to show up as it's white, so I'm going to use an alizarin crimson. Just put a pearl wash of that on, right the way over. Pull that handle round just using the point of the brush. Just come down there a little bit. Right, what I'm going to do now is just dry that with the hairdryer, and then we'll put in the dry marks. Right, now this is completely dry, and don't be tempted to rush this part because if it's slightly wet, your dry brush mark lines will just run and that defeats the whole object. So just using the size 16 brush with a really good point, I'm just going to put some wispy hair bits in. And the sepia that I'm using, just sort of go with how that's flowing in the wind. I don't want to put too many lines in, but enough to make it look interesting. And now I'm just going to use some Prussian blue and a little bit of sepia and just squint a little bit any dark shapes that you can see, just pop those in with the tip of the brush. The dark line, the arm meets the t-shirt there. We've got these lovely, lovely wrinkles. Just all really add to it. And just look at the shapes, pop those in. Now we can do exactly the same with the little boy. So let's just start with some sepia. Just darken that side a little bit. And now with the Prussian blue, some lovely dark shapes. You don't want to overdo this, because what can happen is you start to fiddle and you just get too much in there. So just enough to make it look realistic. Line up there. I've got to put these straps in, so it was too wet earlier to do that. Now onto the bucket, let's just use something quite dark. I'm going to mix some sepia in with the alizarin crimson and just again squint a little bit. With the dark rim around the top there. It's a little bit darker at the bottom where there's some water showing through. Let's just pop that in. A little dark shadow down there. Let's show that up a little bit more. Now all we need to do now is to give them a shadow. So we can put a little bit of that red just reflecting below that bucket, just to make it a bit more interesting than a grey shadow. Some of the green that he's got in his t-shirt goes right up to his foot, but that foot is in the air, so keep that one down, just around. And a little bit of the blue that we use, the cobalt blue for the girl's t-shirt, again that's not touching her foot because her foot's lifted, but we need to bring that shadow up to that foot. Just merge that a little bit and then just dip that brush into the Prussian blue. A little bit of darker shadow just here and there. And there we have it. 2 children going crabbing in Mudderford. You can see this, the instructions in the book Painting Dorset in Watercolour. What I will do when this is really, really dry is I'll take a putty eraser and I'll rub out all these pencil marks, but you do need to make sure that this is really dry before you do that. And have fun!